Friends, let us discuss on brief history of human rights, national and international perspective. As very well said by Mary Robinson, former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, that human rights are inscribed in the hearts of the people. Coming down to the introduction, human rights are those minimal rights which every individual must have against the state or other public authority by virtue of his being a member of human family, irrespective of any other consideration. Though the concept of human right is as old as the ancient doctrine of natural rights founded on natural law, the expression human rights is of recent origin, emerging from international charters and international conventions. Let us see now what Black's Law Dictionary defines, or how Black's Law Dictionary defines human rights. According to Black's Law Dictionary, human rights are the freedoms, immunities and benefits that, according to modern values, all human beings should be able to claim as a matter of right in the society in which they live. According to philosopher Kant, he says, or he defines human rights as an alternative explanation which was provided by him. He said that human beings have an intrinsic value absent in inanimate objects. To violate a human right would therefore be a failure to recognize the worth of human life. Now, let us discuss the origin of human rights, that is through religious texts. The Vedas and Upanishads, the ancient religious scripts of Hindus in India, instruct believers to respect the sacredness of life, to adhere to their duty, to practice charity and to act on behalf of justice for others. The Indian philosopher and leader Kautilya wrote in the Arthashastra that individual worth of each person gave them certain inherent rights that require even kings to respect them. According to him, government leaders, he insisted, had an obligation to establish rule of law that would promote justice by treating people benevolently, fairly and with respect. The Indian king Ashoka from the 3rd century BC, who had an influential and celebrated reign which grew from the influences of Buddhist religious principles, he enacted laws stressing justice and guaranteeing the freedoms of worship and freedom of thought. Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama approximately 2500 years ago, stress human equality, the worth of each person and the necessity for its follower to practice love, kindness and compassion towards all beings. According to Judaism, the scriptures of Judaism similarly speaks about common humanity, law of ethical behavior to protect against the abuse, freeing the oppressed and practicing social justice. Muhammad the Prophet, revelation of the 7th century as recorded in the Quran, similarly addressed the duty of those who believe in Islam to practice justice, mercy and charity, particularly towards the most vulnerable in society. Now, let us see the development from ancient period. The Hammurabi Code, further contributions to human rights against the arbitrary use or abuse of power, were given by Hammurabi, the king of Babylon, whose famous Hammurabi Code of 1760 BC provided legal protections for certain kinds of rights. Then in 539 BC, the founder of Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, promulgated the Charter of Cyrus, sometimes described as the world's first Charter of Human Rights, in that it mentions certain rights of liberty, security, freedom of movement and religious belief. It also prohibited slavery and oppression, protected the right of property and guaranteed the right of religious freedom. Let us now discuss on the Reformation and Renaissance period. Hugo Grotius, who has been often credited as the father of modern international law, wrote extensively in 1625 that natural law universally endowed all human beings with certain natural rights of protection and just and equal treatment irrespective of all religious or civil status. John Locke and Rouse gave new meaning and content to individuals' rights and limiting the power of the government. They interpreted this theory of social contract theory, and John Locke, precisely at the same time, the most pivotal philosopher of the century, wrote two treatises of civil government to justify the glorious revolution of 1688 and explain the import of Declaration and Bill of Rights. Rouse Jean-Jacques, in his interpretation of natural law and social contract theory, laid emphasis on people's sovereignty. It stands for the freedom and equality of men. Locke and Rouse exercised great influence on the contemporary thought and inspired French and American revolutions. Let us see the development and growth of human rights now. The Magna Carta or Great Charter was arguably the most significant early influence on the extensive historical process that led to the rule of constitutional law today in the English speaking world. Coming down to the Petition of Right, Magna Carta and the Petition of Rights 1689 together formed the Bill of Rights of 1689. Bill of Rights 1689. This enactment flowed from the above, giving rise to a parliamentary statute, the declaration where the people made the Prince and Princess of Orange to subscribe at their accession in 1688. The contribution of this instrument led towards the development of fundamental rights. Coming down to the Act of Settlement, this Act of Settlement declared the rights and liberties of the subject, which asserted as the birthright of the people of England. Then the Mayflower Compact. The significance of this compact lies in the fact that when the colonial revolt started in 1763, the colonists pointed to this compact as the contract between the colonist and the king, by which he was deemed to assure protection of their natural rights. The Virginia Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights adopted the state constitution of Virginia in 1776 as the first declaration of rights in a written constitution as the basis and foundation of the government. The impress of the doctrine of natural rights is to be found in the preamble of this declaration. The theory of natural rights entered into the realm of constitutionalism with the two revolutionary documents. Firstly, American Declaration of Independence 1776. On 4th July 1776, the United States Congress approved the Declaration of Independence. Its primary author, Thomas Jefferson, wrote the declaration as a formal explanation of why Congress had voted on 2nd July to declare independence from Great Britain, more than a year after the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, and as a statement announcing that the 13 American colonies were no longer a part of the British Empire. Congress issued the Declaration of Independence in several forms. It was initially published as a printed broadsheet that was widely distributed and read to the public. Philosophically, the Declaration stressed two themes: first, individual rights, and the right of revolution. These ideas became widely held by Americans and spread internationally as well, influencing in particular the French Revolution. The French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, 1789. In 1789, the people of France brought about the abolishment of the absolute monarchy and set the stage for the establishment of the first French Republic. Just 6 weeks after the storming of the Bastille and barely 3 weeks after the abolition of feudalism, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was adopted by the National Constituent Assembly as the first step toward writing a constitution for the Republic of France. Lord Acton described it as a single document that was more powerful than libraries and stronger than the armies of Napoleon. Then the US Bill of Rights 1791. The Bill of Rights of the US Constitution protects basic freedoms of United States citizens. Written during the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia, the Constitution of the United States of America is the fundamental law of the US federal system of government and the landmark document of the Western world. It is the oldest written national constitution in use and defines the principal organs of government and their jurisdictions and the basic rights of citizens. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, came into effect on 15 December 1791, limiting the powers of the federal government of the United States and protecting the rights of all citizens, residents and visitors in American territory. Then let us come down to the human rights instruments. The United Nations Charter has been signed by 150 countries today. Though its obligatory status was in question, it is now the accepted view that Article 56 makes it necessary for all signatories to respect and promote human rights. The name United Nations, coined by United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt, was first used in the Declaration by United Nations of 1st January 1942 during the Second World War, when representatives of 26 nations pledged their governments to continue fighting together against the Axis powers. States first established international organizations to cooperate on specific matters. The International Telecommunication Union was founded in 1865 as the International Telegraph Union, and the Universal Postal Union was established in 1874. Both are now United Nations specialized agencies. In 1899, the International Peace Conference was held in The Hague to elaborate instruments for settling crises peacefully, preventing wars and codifying rules of warfare. It adopted the Convention for the Pacific Settlement of International Disputes and established the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which began work in 1902. The forerunner of the United Nations was the League of Nations, an organization conceived in similar circumstances during the First World War and established in 1919 under the Treaty of Versailles to promote international cooperation and to achieve peace and security. The International Labour Organization was also created under the Treaty of Versailles as an affiliated agency of the League. The League of Nations ceased its activities after failing to prevent the Second World War. In 1945, representatives of 50 countries met in San Francisco at the United Nations Conference on International Organization to draw up the United Nations Charter. Those delegates deliberated on the basis of proposals worked out by the representatives of China, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom and the United States at Dumbarton Oaks, United States in August to October 1944. The charter was signed on 26 June 1945 by the representatives of the 50 countries. Poland, which was not represented at the conference, signed it later and became one of the original 51 member states. The United Nations officially came into existence on 24th October 1945 when the charter had been ratified by China, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, the United States and by a majority of other signatories. And United Nations Day is celebrated on 24th October each year. Thank you.